Afternoon, Alex.
Good afternoon, Marco. How are you doing?
Yeah, very well up here in Costa Blanca. And yourself down in Marbella?
Yeah, all good down here on the Costa del Sol.
Sun's shining as usual.
The sun is shining, yes.
Yeah, it's been beautiful actually, hasn't it, for January?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is a live session with Alex Radford from Legal Services in Spain. As you can see, legalservicesinspain.com, and underneath that banner, we've got many other headings, which are your main line of services. Today, we're going to concentrate on inheritance, which is inheritingyourSpanishAssets.com. You can see behind me in purple there a nice bright logo. But you can reach inheritingSpanishAssets.com either through Legal Services in Spain. It's all the same. It's all the same business, isn't it, Alex?
Yeah.
Just an introduction then, Alex, from you.
Yeah, so my name is Alex Radford. I'm an English solicitor and Spanish lawyer. I've lived in Spain now for nearly 30 years, and we act for British clients buying, selling, inheriting property in Spain, and also doing business in Spain. And today we are talking about estate planning. It's part one of our series, Here Today, Gone Tomorrow. Yeah.
So really, the thing is, for me, people like me that don't really have a clue about this, Alex, this succession of interviews, which is quite in depth, so it needs to be done in parts. But really, the start of this is for anybody that is either already in Spain or is looking at buying a property in Spain or having any assets in Spain. Whether it be a holiday home or whether it be a permanent place of residence. And it's the protection part that you're going to explain why people should start to think about this, because it's a foreign country. They probably don't have a clue. So where does your advice start from?
So you make a good point there, Marco. So in effect, when someone decides to move to Spain, to buy a property in Spain, that's the ideal opportunity to have a conversation about who to buy the assets in the name of, who pays for them, who's in whose name they'll be registered, and then to put in place things like Spanish wills, etc. Because that upfront conversation can save quite a lot of money further down the line when it comes to inheritance tax. So recently I acted for clients, and they said they were buying a second property in Spain, and the client said to me, "Look, I'm going to buy it in my name." I said, "Is there a particular reason why you're buying it in your name?" And he said, "Yeah, because I bought the other one in my name." So I said, "Well, how much was the other one?" He told me how much the other property he purchased was, and he said, "Look," and I said to him, "Look, if you buy this one, when you pass on, who would you leave those assets to?" And he said, "I leave them to my wife." So I said, "Well, at the moment, your wife would probably end up paying about 60,000 euros in inheritance tax in Spain alone, just for inheriting an asset, which you can put in joint names now." So that conversation saved them 60,000 euros. So before someone buys a property, I think it's worth considering ownership options. Are you going to move to Spain? In which case, I'd certainly recommend buying a property in your own names. If you are going to buy a holiday home and you've got children over the age of 18, then it might be an opportunity to discuss potentially putting the property, adding them as legal owners of the property, along with the adults as well. So just, when I say adults, I mean mum and dad. So mum and dad and the parents have the property. So we've done that for mainly for people who are buying holiday homes. Have a think about maybe owning it with children and parents together.
So really, you're advising joint ownership is a much better plan going forward than just having a single ownership or a husband and wife.
Absolutely. So, I mean, this only really works, Mark. Each person's circumstances are different. So if you said to me, I've got young children. If I died, I'd want everything to go to my wife because my children can't manage my affairs. Absolutely correct. You then have a Spanish will and you leave everything to your wife. But up front, certainly aim to buy the property in joint names, because in Spain, whoever inherits the property pays the tax. So the more they inherit, the more tax they pay. And because we've got 17 different autonomous regions, we've got different inheritance tax tables in each region. The most important ones we've put on our website, the inheritingSpanishAssets.com, so people can look at the tables on there, and they can more or less calculate or have a rough idea of the allowances they'd have If they wanted us to calculate the inheritance tax for them, we can of course do that for them.
Okay, so that's the first point. People that are looking, and if at buying a property, but if they've already lived in Spain, they're living here, such as myself, and they haven't got a Spanish will, and they haven't protected anything looking further down the line, where's the point? What do they do now? What can you offer them to sort this out?
So essentially, anyone who's got an asset in Spain should have, in my opinion, a Spanish will. A Spanish will is not compulsory, but it's strongly advisable. A Spanish will can help you mitigate inheritance tax. It can ensure that the assets in Spain go to the people that you want them to go to. And upon death, Marco, it will make life much easier for the heirs to come along, use a Spanish will to accept the inheritance in Spain of those Spanish assets. And if someone's got assets in other countries, then we would recommend that you have a will in that country. So if you've got assets in the UK or Sweden or Norway or America, have a will in each of those jurisdictions, and then have a Spanish will for your Spanish assets. Yeah. And they work together. It's very important that they work together, because the first clause of many international wills is, I revoke all former wills. And if you'd signed a perfectly valid Spanish will in front of a notary here in Spain or in your home country, and then you asked your lawyer in your home country to update your will, and they put in that clause, I revoke all former wills, that would revoke the Spanish will. So then you might have, and I've come across this, I've seen international wills that say, I revoke all former wills, and then they only have this international will referring to the assets outside of Spain. So they think that because they've got a will in their home country, they haven't revoked the Spanish will, but in fact they have.
So how do you stop that happening?
Well, how to stop that happening? Make sure that when you sign a new will, that your lawyer is aware that you've got a will, and they have to work together. So you refer to the will. So you could say, I revoke all of my former wills except my Spanish will dated X.
Right. So that's a clause that everyone should be aware of when making a will, that it doesn't exclude or revoke their other wills, and they can include their other wills without that happening.
Absolutely. That's really, really important.
Yeah.
So, we talked about the ownership options. Ownership options, when you're buying a property, that can reduce inheritance tax as well, because again, in Spain, there's no free transfer of assets between spouses. So in other countries, you've got different titles, different forms of ownership of property. For example, in the UK, you've got joint tenancy. So a husband and wife can own a property, and when one of them dies, the other one inherits it automatically. And you just send a form off to the land registry, and you can transfer the ownership. That doesn't happen in Spain. Right. And assets don't transfer automatically. So in effect, spouses who own property together and they've left assets to each other, they have to come forward and accept that inheritance. And depending on the value and where the property is located in Spain, and the region and the tax tables that apply, they may or not pay inheritance tax. So again, right up front, Marco, it's good to talk about, okay, I'm owning the property now, I'm here today, or I'm just about to buy the property. How can I mitigate inheritance tax going forward?
Yeah. And let's just pause there for a moment. In regards to Spanish people that obviously know all the rules, they've lived, they've been born in Spain, the families give them advice. Is it correct in saying that in most Spanish cases, the properties are owned by the rest of the family, as in the daughters, sons? So they don't keep it in their name.
What happens when in Spain, the inheritance tax laws in Spain for Spaniards are different to those of other European countries. So each European country has different rules and laws. So in Spain, 2/3 of the assets upon death have to go to the children. So if you've got a married couple and they own two properties and they own them in equal shares, 50-50, when one of those dies, 50% of that property would go, so 2/3 of that would go down to the children. But that's only to Spaniards here. So what you do find out with Spaniards is that I've acted for clients buying property from Spanish heirs and beneficiaries, and I can remember a time where we acted for clients and they purchased a property from 13 heirs. So because they had there's lots of brothers and sisters, and the family had kept on.
Passing
The
it
family,
down.
various people had died, and they hadn't dealt with the inheritance. So we had 13 heirs. 13 people came along to the notary to accept the inheritance. Thankfully, that doesn't happen, for example, with English law as much, because people come forward, they accept the inheritance, and under English law, we have free disposition of assets. So people in England, in the United Kingdom, have free disposition of assets. They can leave their assets to whoever they want.
Yeah.
Right? Spain can't. They've got forced heirship rules. 2/3 of their assets have to go to the children.
So how does that affect then British people living in Spain?
But British people living in Spain can leave their assets to whoever they want.
Right.
Okay?
So that's fair enough. Okay.
But they've got to put a will in place to reflect those requirements. So if they didn't put a will in place, they didn't have a Spanish will, and they moved to Spain and lived for numerous years, then they could be treated as a Spanish national upon death without a will, which means that Spanish inheritance tax laws could apply, which means that their assets could go 2/3 to the children instead of, say, to a spouse. So that's another reason for having a Spanish will. So you make it absolutely clear who you're leaving your assets to, and in that Spanish will, you can choose the law. So you can say, right, I was born in the UK, I want the laws of England and Wales to apply, and that means I can leave it to whoever I want. And under Regulation 650, I can state English law to apply. Right. And I've chosen the law, and I've chosen my beneficiaries, and upon death, my wishes will kind of be will be adhered to. If I didn't have a Spanish will, then in effect, the more time you spend here, Spanish inheritance laws start to apply.
And what does it make a difference if a British person was a resident in Spain with their TIE residencia, or whether they're just under the 90-day rule?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you're coming to visit your holiday home and you're not a resident in Spain and you pass away and you haven't got a Spanish will, then your English will would apply if it refers to Spanish assets. If it didn't refer to Spanish assets, then your heirs and beneficiaries would have to apply to the UK for what's known as letters of administration, and that can take 4, 5, 6 months to get through. So one of the advantages I mentioned earlier about having a Spanish will is that upon death, the heirs can come forward and deal with the estate really quite quickly. Right. And there's no hold-ups because there's a Spanish will in place, and you can move quite quickly to inherit the assets. And lots of times that is necessary, especially if you've got mortgages in place, if you've got children, school fees, you need access to money, etc. So all of those reasons, for the sake of a cost of Spanish will, we'd strongly recommend having a Spanish will, and that can mitigate significant amounts of inheritance tax.
Yeah. Okay, that's it for this session, isn't it, Alex? And we've got more to talk on the subject next time.
Look forward to it.
I believe.
Look forward to it, Marco.